From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. I'm Ken Napzok.
And I'm Jennifer Landa. This feels weird. We're missing a box.
We're missing a box. Joseph Scrimshaw is out living life. He is in Norway with a well-deserved vacation, staying up till 1:30 in the morning where it's bright and sunny, something I've yet to experience and don't know what that will do. So it's just you and I, which happens every so often. Jen. It's just you.
Yeah. It's nice to be able to connect one-on-one.
One-on-one. We are going to be looking at some Star Wars news, breaking news from a long time ago, which is yesterday, but the news has already changed. We're going to, by the time we're recorded, thankfully more information came out. Before we get to all that, we're going to let you know that this show, as always, is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for, say it with me, your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. That should be on a ForceCenter shirt. We are recommending an audiobook you can try out on us, The Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, the beginning of the High Republic, still my favorite Star Wars book of the modern era. Check it out. Download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. That's our Audible. We have the other A. Jen, you've got the ask this week.
I have the ask. We are asking for you all, if you are on YouTube, to check out our YouTube channel and subscribe. Smash that notification bell. Hit the like button, whatever the kids say.
Do it.
Yeah, because we're so close. If you can get us to 10,000 subs, right now we are at 9,450, hopefully.
Ish, yeah, it's there. Yep.
So close. Just push us over that edge so we can continue making great content.
Great content, that C word, capital C content, but it's the age we're in. It's been a lot of fun getting the clips out there on Acolyte. I want to thank our friend Big Lou from Big Lou's Clubhouse. Check out his stuff as well on YouTube. He said, hey, I'd like to do some clips for you because he's an editor as well. And it's been a lot of fun and bringing in a lot of new folks. Like I always joke, friends and new enemies. But it's been great to see some new names pop up both on Instagram and there on Facebook or YouTube. And Facebook, too, actually. Yeah, some on Facebook, too, as well.
Oh, good.
Star Wars Life Adventure, before we get to news, Jen, I know, you're a little under the weather at the time it's recording. We'll acknowledge and own that, just in case it feels a little shorter today. We want to get you back into bed with Theraflu or just back to more work.
Yeah, Theraflu. I forgot about that. After the Acolyte ended, I felt like how I think many of us feel after a show ends. It's like, oh, now what do I do? Now what am I going to dedicate my time to doing besides studying? And I was looking forward to Star Wars Celebration. And then I realized, I'm not going. And it's in 2025. So, because I feel like that's where the Acolyte maybe might have some presence since we're not, I mean, maybe they could be at Comic-Con, but Star Wars is kind of backed away from Comic-Con a little bit, right?
Yeah. We'll talk about today some of the publishing stuff coming, but yeah, a little bit less presence. Even at D23, not a lot of Star Wars stuff seems to be on the docket. I'm sure something will emerge, but not as much as you think.
So I'm kind of missing that. I want to be able to see people's cosplays and be able to connect to other fans in person and, chat about the Acolyte. But I guess we'll have to wait, and I will be on my computer watching Star Wars Celebration. Yeah.
CouchCon is, an okay thing.
It's all right.
We're working on the idea. A lot of people ask ForceCenter you go into Star Wars Celebration 2025. We have ideas to go, but it's a long way away, and it's a long way away. So we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, dare to dream.
Dare to dream. Well, all right. That's your adventures. Studying,
that's my adventures. Resting. That's all I got. Otherwise, I'm going to be talking about mirror neurons, which are fascinating. And signs of a stroke. So heavy stuff.
I'd like to take notes on that one.
Yeah, it's really important. I'm like, everyone should have to learn about that.
Yeah, I was in the past a trained first responder. You should take the classes. I don't remember a lot of it. So I think maybe I should take some notes again, just in case that weird feeling I've got going on or something. Serious stuff, dark stuff, but also, hey, Star Wars Adventures for me. I got to admit, I want to talk about this, Jen. I same thing. Acolyte ended. I love the series. I keep saying I really liked watching it, but I love discussing the show even more. And it got into serious spots. I think you had some wonderful stuff today to say last episode, and all through the run of our Acolyte reviews. I have openly struggled with where the show seemed to land on dark side versus light, Sith versus Jedi, and I've tried to pull that apart a lot and just make sure that I'm saying it's not necessarily the show, it's not what the show's intentions were, it was where it was going. But I spent a lot of time this weekend. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable here. Reflecting on your words about the series and how you saw it and your perspective and your journey, and lining that up to what the show was doing, and how whether we get a second season or not, it's just telling the story of a fall in a different way. And I want to shout out to my buddy and co-host on Anytime, Alden Diaz. We were talking about as well. But look, it's just a different kind of fall. And that's why a lot of people saw themselves in it. And it's not necessarily an endorsement of the fall. I don't want to fall victim to that, because I'm someone, especially in the Game of Thrones world. It's like, no, you're supposed to learn the lessons from the fall of a character or the journey of a character, not necessarily take that as a endorsement for the big philosophical discussions in life. You took a very personal, personal experiences that you brought into the show. You felt represented. You felt seen in so many ways, but emotionally, maybe more than anything. And if you will, I was in my cups over the weekend. I was a little depressed. I was like, did Star Wars really endorse the Sith? Did Star Wars really? And I don't think that's accurate. And we're going to talk about that with Darth Plagueis here. I shout out you and your wonderful perspective, which helped calm me down and see it from, see the value in what was going on. I wanted to read. Did you see Molly Damon, our friend Molly Damon's thread she did a couple days after the finale? Right, I'm going to read.
Please read it. Please. Yes. It's so good.
Molly Damon, a friend of the show, a friend in real life as well as YouTube, tweeted out, as a woman living in a world where we are slowly losing every right to control our own lives and bodies, I thought seeing Osha absolutely unleash her anger and power was extremely cathartic and satisfying. I did initially think there was an absence of hope in the show, and I think that is due to me being so used to having no hope in real life. Let that sink in. I also tend to really enjoy horror movies that leave you with that sinking feeling of no hope, finding comfort in seeing outcomes that are way worse than my own, perhaps. I think it's good to see a more complicated exploration of the dark side in Star Wars, not to actually seduce anyone into believing it's the right choice, but to add complexity, entertainment, passion, tragedy, and emotion to the universe. So shout out to Molly for putting that out there. And I read that, and I just kind of had, number one, a little bit of my, this isn't necessarily your story to be in the weeds on, right? This is there's a lot of things I personally can take from the Acolyte story, but this is a story written from a different perspective with a different point of view and a different statement. And it's important for me to maybe be in the passenger seat for some of these conversations versus the driver's seat, even though this is a show where we're talking about this stuff. So shout out to you, Jen. Shout out to Molly for helping me gain some perspective on where the Acolyte landed and why it landed there.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah, Molly's tweet thread was just, it was like, yes. Because there are times where I was like, am I reading too much into this? Am I bringing too much of my own emotional, baggage? But I've seen some interviews with Leslye Headland since, and her kind of talking about things. I'm like, oh no, I think my instincts were right. And whether or not they were right, it's just how we all are going to view these stories, is through our own personal lens.
There's always a balance, and it's one thing that I have been accused of in the Star Wars punditry world, and then Joseph as well, you as well, just being part of this show and what we do here, where we dig into the themes, where, one example comes to mind. I love the scene where Han Solo gets his name. It's not the greatest scene in Star Wars, and I'm not going to sit there and bang on about it like it's a top 10 scene. I get it. We could have maybe not had it, but I love what's there. We've broken it down here a lot on this channel. It is the indifference of the Empire. It's a Tuesday for this oppressor. And Han finds himself in that moment. He finds this idea, this image of who he wants to be, Han Solo. It seems maybe even cheesy, but the name itself is always kind of cheesy. Going back to 77, we get it, Han Solo. And I love that scene. And then someone to my face, a former coworker, you read too much into it. And I shrugged to that, Jen, because that's a scene about Han and his last name. But what you're talking about is your life and your experiences and what you even want to pass down to your daughters. That's not too much. That's real. That's there. And Star Wars is speaking to you on that. And I think we're never going to stop digging deep into those little moments of Star Wars. Why would we want to?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the fun of it. Otherwise, it's just, pew pew laser swords. I'm like, all right, but that's what brings us back to these stories over and over again, and why there is this massive fan base who has been around since the 70s, right? It's because these
Hmm.
stories have depth. They are, modern myths. They challenge us, and they, talk about our humanity.
Yeah, and pew pew laser swords,
And
which
pew
is
pew
pretty cool.
and furry murder bears. See, it's all great.
Furry murder bears. We're talking about furry bears. Yeah, when I'm on the playground as a kid, there's a lot of options in front of you for the thing to love, and I did love a lot of things. I talk about my love of Robotech, that series in the mid '80s. There's all that, but like GI Joe, Transformers, Care Bears, Rainbow Bright, whatever was there,
Gem in
whatever
the
is there.
hologram.
Yeah, a gem in the holograms. I chose Star Wars because of pew pew laser swords and because of flying ships. But then as you grow older, you find yourself in them more and more. So that was my Star Wars adventures. Not as important as you studying, human beings, but
Yes, and language disorders. But yeah, no, but it's fun and great and it's deep and it's relevant to all of our lives, including my dog.
indeed, indeed. Well, let's get into some Star Wars news today. We are catching up a little bit with some Acolyte stuff. We've had some thoughts over here, ForceCenter, about creators. I don't want to say explaining their shows. I think it's unfair. I saw someone, a friend of mine, tweet out, like, if you have to keep explaining your show, you didn't write it well. I just think that's really unfair, even though I've expressed some desire to have some of the creators pull back on explaining what's going on. I just think that's where we are in media, you're going to sit down and some journalist or someone writing for a movie news website is going to dig in and ask you to explain every corner of it, because that's just where we've been over the last 10 years. The Easter egg kind of approach to it all. So she did have some interesting things to say to IndieWire about that episode 8 of the Acolyte appearance of that, the Moon, or the Mun, if you will, who will eventually be Palpatine's Sith Master. We're talking about Darth Plagueis. Leslye Headland said she was, that Plagueis, I should say, was always in the show, and she had wanted to see him appear in Star Wars storytelling. She was a fan. So she did it. She, as someone I've seen comment, was the change that she wanted to be. And she confirmed that, of course, it is Darth Plagueis. There was a little bit of question because, hey, you didn't see the name, hear the name, but it was Plagueis, and we always felt it was. So, Jen, let's start there. I wanted to test the temperature here. What is our relationship to the character? Like, how much of you wanted to see Darth Plagueis appear?
I did. I don't want to say I could have cared less, but when I first found out about Darth Plagueis from Revenge of the Sith, I was like, oh, this is a character that has a large backstory that maybe someday we'll learn about, just like with the Clone Wars, right? From
Mm-hmm.
Hope. But it kind of evolved from that point to where I felt like a section of the fan base become very vocal, especially when new Star Wars stories were going to be made, where it's like, we want to see Darth Plagueis, we want to see Darth Tenebrous, we want to see, Knights of the Old Republic, like all the Sith, all the dark side. And for me, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see that. I
Yeah.
want to have hope. I want to see Happy Jedi, right? But now, after I really, when Leslye Headland shared her passion for the,
Mm-hmm.
for the Knights of the Old Republic, the games, legends, and things like that, I was like, okay, let me see how she approaches it. And I loved her approach, and we're gonna get into like the actual, cameo aspect of it and stuff. But for me, and now I'm like, okay, I'm more open for a Sith story, Sith saga, if you will.
Sith Saga. I'm with you, and I think that's going to what I was talking about earlier about trying to process where this show kind of lands. Not necessarily. I keep saying lands as if it was this official state of Star Wars endorsement about the Sith or something like that. It's just telling its own story, and there's going to be lessons to learn in it. But I, for years, I love the idea of Darth Plagueis. I love that book by James Luceno, and I love that if some of that can get pulled into canon, as they have done in the past by pulling legends piece by piece or line by line into canon. It would be interesting. It's a great story, and love the Revenge of the Sith scene. But I've always been, I don't know. I guess it was the Darth Plagueis staff in Force Awakens kind of bull roar that kind of dominated so many of the conversations in and around that time, which I was interested in. I had that Darth Plagueis action figure. The staff did look like the one Rey had in the film. It wasn't a crazy question to ask, but it just became an obsession for many. And I think I don't want to celebrate the Sith, but I do want to explore the Sith. All that to say, I think any doubts, any trepidation, any kind of soapbox that I might get on about the Sith, Jen, went out the window when those little spindly fingers came around the corner of that cave. I was really excited. I'm excited to finally say I even predicted he would not show up in the Acolyte. I think even a year out or 2 years out, when some of the stuff was emerging from the Acolyte, I was like, there's no way a Plagueis type character is going to be in the series. I was really wrong, dead wrong. And now here it is. I would love to see more with this character. I think he's here. The party can start. The Sith party can start now.
The Sith party can start. Just his appearance, I thought was so well done, which apparently it was all CGI. Is that correct? No motion capture, nothing.
Okay.
But the character looked otherworldly, which the character should, right? But it just was like everything was choreographed so beautifully, like the fingers and the lurking, and you don't see too much of him, but you see enough of him where you're like, this is a bad guy, even if you don't know who he is.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's part of the next thing we'll talk about, but he doesn't dominate the story, which I think I was afraid of this becoming a Plagueis story. It's not, but Plagueis hangs over it there. And so Leslye Headland went on to say in this IndieWire interview that the Sith story overall in this timeline, 100 years out of Phantom Menace, is about survival. They're not running the Republic. They're not running the First Order. They're not running the Empire. These are the things she was saying. And this means Plagueis wants something from the Stranger and Osha. And she talked about deciding not to end the end the series or the first season, hopefully first season, on Plagueis. That was originally planned, that this would be the last shot of the series. They changed that around. She felt it would take away from Osha's triumph, talking a little bit about what we were talking about earlier in the show, about what you're taking from Osha's journey. But she said overall that it speaks to Chimere, the Stranger, not being entirely honest with her, making this a bittersweet tragedy. So how does it affect your view on the story of the Acolyte going forward, Jen, if we're going to assume we're going to get a season 2 at some point? You've got Plagueis in the shadows. Whether or not Chimere knows he's there, we'll figure that out. But it does mean maybe he's withheld some information from Osha at this point in the conversation.
Right. And as I think we've talked about before, like, are they still master and apprentice? Has Plagueis been like, no, it's fine. You can go off and live your life. Ha ha. That's not going to actually happen. I'm still going to be lurking in the shadows. So what is their relationship? How I like the idea that the character is an underdog. There again is kind of something we haven't really seen as much with the Sith, where I've always seen them as like these all powerful and they're pulling the strings, right? And here it's like, well, how is he going to kind of claim his power? And where did he get this power? Are the witches involved with him kind of learning how to create life, right? I mean, maybe this was explained in the book. See, that's why I'm like, I don't know. No, but
even then, it doesn't, to me, and I mean this respectfully, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't. Right. Lucina's book's great. Lucina's long been one of my favorite writers. Also was one of the co-writers on the Robotech books, the novelizations of the whole story. I've loved him for decades. But yeah, you could figure out how to do it differently. And how much is Palpatine telling Anakin? How much truth is he telling Anakin? How much is just kind of legends in his own mind, just kind of recalibrating some of the stuff? And I don't have a preference. I think I'd like the idea of it's something the witches, or at least Mother Anastasia, figured out and knew to use the Force in some kind of unnatural way, which I think, again, is slightly different from the Anakin birth, or the Anakin creation. I know some people are upset about that, but hear it out. But just that because the desire to survive, because Plagueis' ultimate goal is immortality. It isn't to create a chosen one. It isn't to create someone else in a more powerful way. He wants immortality, just like Palpatine later on wants to not let go of life unnaturally. So if he sees it, I like the idea of him taking it from someone else who did all the legwork.
Right. And I do wonder, like, how much is he going to factor into season 2? Like, in the sense of, is it going to be like he is the main antagonist? And, I don't know how I feel about that. I love what they've done so far with everything, and they've challenged me in all these different ways, so I'm open to it. But just seeing that character in every episode, I don't know. Yeah. I could get really pulpy, which could be very fun, right?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, a month, like however you want to say it. That's the great Star Wars tradition. Say it how you want until George Lucas or someone else corrects you, and then they'll say it differently in another interview. It could. This is why the Darth Tenebris thing of a Sith Bith looks
Yes.
great in concept art. Sounds great when you're reading it in a novel. I don't have a lot of faith that it could work in live action yet. I don't know.
No.
And that goes. And I love. This is almost a side conversation, but like Mandalorian brought in a lot of classic Star Wars characters. And I loved it, like in terms of designs, alien
Yes.
species, those things. It didn't always work for me, even though I loved it overall. But sometimes I'd be like, well, okay. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little awkward at the dinner table. But some sort of CGI motion capture, there's ways to maybe make that. And we'll talk a little bit later about who we think. But to your overall thing of him leading, I wouldn't want him to be, as he'd obviously be a major part of it, perhaps going forward. We'd want those kind of answers, but I don't want him to be the lead. Plus, this is still very much, if we're going forward, it's so much about Osha and Chimera and their relationship, and I don't necessarily mean that in just the romance side of it. There, we know they shot a kiss, but that didn't make it. It was the hand holding moment. I don't want them. I want this to be about what they're learning about each other. And if Osha Headland calls it a triumph, and it is, and something I think you and Molly and others have taken from her decision, doesn't necessarily mean it's not a bittersweet one. I want to see, when Chimera has to kind of put the other cards on the table, or if he does.
Oof. Yes. I love it. That gets me excited, just how they've handled everything. And I don't think all of a sudden now Plagueis is going to be the main character in a season 2. If we get a season 2, he'll just be kind of like, not just lurking in the shadows, but kind of looming large over the whole story.
Yeah. And it's a little bit more about that Sith lie, right? The Sith lie of I don't mean this to take away anything from where they landed with Osha and Chimera, or the stranger at the end. But there's something always around the corner. The lie of you've made this choice, you got this freedom, but there's the devil has his due coming, and you got to pay up, kind of thing is intriguing to me to explore, while also keeping this decision that Osha made, at the forefront, and rolling around with that. And would you, follow up question to all this? Would you want to explore the Sith lineage leading up to Palpatine, even if it's only one or two characters? You could always have an apprentice that comes and goes, I guess. If Plagueis is in control, I'd love the idea of Plagueis swapping away apprentices who try to kill him up until Palpatine catches them off guard in his sleep. Is it something you want to explore at this point now?
Yeah, I am open to it, but I do think that they have to be careful, right? Because it's like, well, how far do we want to take this to Palpatine? Do we actually want to see a young Palpatine a la deepfake technology? How do we want to go about this? And really it also is like, how many seasons of the Acolyte are we going to get? Or is this just going to be its own standalone series exploring, the Sith and dark side tales, as I've said? I don't know. I'm open to it because I just like how they've already approached everything so far. But if you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said absolutely not. Because I don't want it to be like this, these unbeatable baddies. I don't want it to be like that type of a thing, right? But I think that they're exploring it in a good way that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, you could take. For years, there's been people wanting a young Palpatine series, not like a CBS sitcom, but a young Palpatine. The thoughts of Hiddleston and all those kind of characters we know. It looks like what Matt Smith might have been a younger version of him in Rise of Skywalker. They didn't go with that decision in the end, and something I actually liked. I think it should have been Ian McDiarmid there all the way to the end, because I want to enjoy McDiarmid's performance as the Emperor until we can't anymore. But I would almost, if you give me a year, a season, I should say, a 10 episode, maybe make it 12, stretch it out, of just young Palpatine, the political machinations, while also dealing with his master, in an Andor style. And I know Gilroy's going to be done with Star Wars after this, and he probably wouldn't be interested in exploring this. But if you could just approach it, I'm not even talking about how it's shot, but just that ground level, young politician rising on Naboo, also slinking off to the shadows, trying to, I don't want to say it's an updated, adapted version of the Lucino novel, but you could give a year of that at this point. I think I'd be very happy.
I like that because you do have to ground the stories. For me personally, otherwise it does become a little silly, right?
Mhm.
That's what I loved about the Acolyte is yeah, we had witches and we had all these fantastical things, but it was grounded in these really deep, rich themes. And
Mm.
so, if you're going to have this character, this moon, whatever, with, his spindly fingers and like cackling in the background, it
Mm.
has to be grounded. And it has to be, dare I say, quote unquote, gritty for
Gritty.
it to
Gritty.
work, right? And to not come across as cheesy, but to really
Yeah.
become truly menacing, which I think is what this show did so well with the Acolyte, was that they showed that evil does not just like this, figure in a cloak. It also
Mhm.
can come in many different forms of like
Yeah.
sexual desire and love that turns twisted,
Right.
beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful way to explore evil and darkness.
I like what you're saying there. And look, I know this goes against some of the things even I have put out there of just like, I want hope in Star Wars. And that was something Joseph and I talked about last week. We know just like the concept of hope. And I do like that, you have to keep the younger generation in mind. So this is not me saying I want an R-rated young Palpatine series, but I think Andor rides that line well. And I
Yes.
do have to say that and never want to seem like I'm speaking out against a show of Andor's approach and content. I don't think I needed Marva to say the F word. I'm glad she didn't. But pushing that line is okay for me. I think you can find a way to do it. Again, I always say Revenge of the Sith, PG-13, scared kids in the screenings I was in. So it's okay to push those boundaries a little bit. And this I'm more open to that idea than maybe I would have even been a year or two ago of young Palpatine, the gritty version.
The gritty version. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's time. And we've really seen that with Andor and even this show that kind of skewed a little bit older, right?
Yeah,
Because
time
we
to-
are going to have the skeleton crew. We do have the
Yep.
Mandalorian, which is a little bit more family friendly, or even the Book of Boba Fett. I'm not going to be showing my kids Andor or the Acolyte. Maybe when my daughter is a teenager, right? But not yet. So that's good. We
Yeah.
have a balance for all of us fans.
We have a balance. I want to keep the big Star Wars tenets in mind. I do believe there needs to be hope. I do want pulp. I do want adventure. I'm looking forward to Skeleton Crew more than I even thought I would, because I just want some more not over the top humor like some of George's prequel humor or something like that. But I'm talking about that Han Solo vibe. This is something we've talked about here for a little bit. We've got a lot of stoke. I had a conversation this week in a green room at a comedy club. Someone asked me about Star Wars. They weren't being mean or anything. They're just kind of like, I don't know. This series was kind of, it's a dour. The guy's crying. The guy's upset. Ahsoka this, Ahsoka that. And I actually get that argument. We talked about it here. Give me the Han Solo type. So that wouldn't necessarily be the Palpatine series we're pitching, right, Jen? But
No.
might have that with Skeleton Crew. We might have that, but then we can go a little deeper with this stuff. That's all right. It's possible. Get a little dark. That's fine.
Yes, absolutely.
Final thing on this, Leslye Headland said they worked hard to keep the Legends design of Plagueis, going back to what we were talking about up top, immune in a dark robe with, as she described, graceful horror feel. I think they achieved that, right?
Yes, 100%.
I could have seen them changing this. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Darth Tenebrous shows up. That he, again, not a Sith Bith. We'll see, but I thought this worked, and I want to end with our final fun question in this segment here, Jen. Who would you want to voice Darth Plagueis the Wise?
I wrote down at first Andy Serkis, but the reason why that name came to mind, and obviously not.
Okay.
But I would love someone who has gravitas, but can also be kind of maybe charismatic at times, like not charming per se, but like likable to the person that he's talking to, like believable,
Yes.
but also chilling. Because if you see someone like that in real life, you're gonna know that this is a bad person. I'm not going to follow what they say. So what they say has to be somewhat like interesting and intriguing and kind of like draw you in. And that's why I believe a British actor, I don't know who, I rely on you because my brain can't think of any right now. But someone with gravitas.
I got one here in a second, but you're speaking on one of the things I love. It's like he's Darth Plagueis, but he's also, at least I think they'd carry this over, but he's Hugo Damask. He's you got Damask Holdings. He's a banker. He's a businessman. He's got that side, and I want him to be mesmerized. And so even as Plagueis, even in a cave, talking to the stranger or going, "Hey, Osha, pleasure to meet you." Did the stranger not tell you about his grandpa? He's got to be a little mesmerizing. It's got to be that lull that pulls you into his plans. And this is not my choice. He's a United Kingdom actor, Northern Irish actor. And again, mentioned our buddy Alden Diaz. He put this out there, and I was actually talking with him on Friday after our show, Anytime. And I was like, I'm sorry, this is the answer. It's the only answer. And I'm going to put it over as your answer, but the choice is Richard Dormer from, most notably, if most people know him from Game of Thrones, Lord Beric Dondarrion, the guy who dies 9 times and has the eye patch. And goes almost to the end of the series there. You talk about that gravitas, he's got that voice. I can't even begin to catch the vibe of his voice. But he was a hero in the series, but he was mysterious. He was a little dark again, him dying so many times. You don't know what's going on there. Right. He's the guy that the Hound fought, and that great moment of but it's me you'll fight. Like, that is Plagueis to me. That's just a good version of this bad Sith. So Alden and I are putting Richard Dormer energy into the universe.
Now I have to find those clips because I love that. I watched Game of Thrones and I remember him, but I want to hear the voice. And from what I remember, he does have that great gravitas. But there is also something where like you're like pulled in by him, right? And you're kind of like, yes, almost cheering him on. And obviously I don't want to cheer on Darth Plagueis, but I want to understand how he is able to manipulate, right? Because that's what this is all about. Like, how does he get through to Chimere? What is he telling Chimere that's enticing Chimere to believe this character in a cloak?
It's the McDiarmid factor too. I think that sets the tone of he's a character we love because of the performance. We're not rooting for him, but we love all those moments, including over the top, unlimited power moments, and some of the big moments in his that he's had in Jedi or Rise of Skywalker, or even in the series. Like when Ian McDiarmid said Ahsoka, we accepted it. We didn't care that he didn't say Ahsoka because it was like whatever, he's speaking. So that's my thought. Richard Dormer. Alden put it out there, and I'm going to second it. Richard Dormer is Darth Plagueis the Wise. So
I love it.
On that note, while you all contemplate that, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to look at something we haven't talked about in a while, comic books here on ForceCenter. Welcome back. I'm Ken, that's Jen, and we are taking a look at Star Wars news. Thanks for hanging out with us, whether you're watching or listening. Happy to be here with you all. And Jen, when's the last time you read a Star Wars comic book? Be honest.
Oh my gosh, I can't even remember. I think I actually wasn't there like a Tales of Jabba's Palace?
There was some stuff. There was a Jabba, yeah.
Yeah, I think I got that. My daughter is really into graphic novels.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll kind of check out what she's reading, but no, nothing Star Wars related. Years.
All right, that's fair. We're being honest here because I have been an avid collector of them since they came back in 2014, and even was the Dark Horse run. 2012, 2013 was what got me back into comics. I was producing a weekly comic show with my old pal Tiffany Smith, and she was reviewing them, and I was like, all right, I'm back into comics. Star Wars comics, I got back in. But then the new modern canon emerges, and it wasn't until this last year that I finally had to step aside. Money, time, and I felt, they lost me a little bit with some of the stories. I have to be honest with that, and that's okay. But there's still some great stuff out there. But Jen, I'm going to be back in, and I think you will as well. If we can catch up with what's going to be released here. The current run of stories, which is set between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, comes to a close this September. It's been about a 50-issue run for each of those main ones. The Bounty Hunter series ended in the same time. I don't know where the Aphra one is. I have to check on that. Marvel teased over the weekend that the new era begins in October and released a poster featuring Darth Vader's destroyed helmet and the words, "The final battle of the Galactic Civil War begins." But ahead of the San Diego Comic-Con panel that's going to be hosted by Patton Oswalt, which will cover games, comics, and books, we now know that this is what we're getting. We're getting Star Wars Battle of Jakku Insurgency Rising, written by Alex Segura. The new series described as this: in the wake of the Battle of Endor, can Luke, Leia, and the nascent New Republic stave off an unexpected and deadly new threat? A defiant Imperial takes center stage and goes on the offensive against the New Republic. Leia makes a startling discovery in the Force of Endor. Who are the mysterious and deadly acolytes of the Beyond? What is the new villain's connection to Darth Vader? All this is the post-Return of the Jedi storytelling begins. So we'll just start there. Jen, thoughts on that description and where you want to go with that?
There is so much. First of all, I'm glad that they said post Return of the Jedi, because I swear to God, my brain with these timelines, I'm like, okay, I know the Battle of Jakku takes place here, right? Okay, so that's great. But the fact that they said deadly acolytes of the Beyond, why would they use that word when, right? Like,
well,
do you know why? Why?
Yeah, I do know why, because it's been about 10 years, but the acolytes of the Beyond were in Chuck Wendig's Aftermath. They're the ones that they believe to have Vader's lightsaber, and they were in the interludes. They weren't featured in the main part of the story. And I think Wendig's Aftermath novels were underrated then. They were unfairly attacked then. It was an early example of the Star Wars culture war that was emerging. Because some of the stuff that Wendig put in those books, simple things like representation that people might be different than you, novel concepts to put in there. Wendig got attacked for them. But I think I love going back to those series and Nora Wexley and young Snap and Wedge having a more prominent role, all those kind of things leading up to the Battle of Jakku. But Ray Sloan,
right.
What's his name? Gallius Rax. I can't remember. It's been a while. The Imperial. And I don't know if that's who they're talking about here. But anyways, I'm excited that's where it comes from. So the Acolytes of Beyond, explore more of that. Could be interesting. And there's a lot of other characters from that timeline that are give me an Iden Versio, give me some of those kind of characters that show up.
I appreciate this. This is helpful for me because I have not read the Aftermath. I feel like I know all the characters, obviously, and I think I started the Aftermath books. I never finished them. So this is kind of like a cheat sheet for me, and hopefully will get me back into kind of getting back and reading the novels. Yeah,
well, you can pick up the trade paperbacks when they, release 5 or 6 at a time, because that's what probably I'll be doing. I just don't have as much room to get the comics and store them anymore, and I don't always go digital with these. It's because I do love comics so much. I think they're little pieces of art. So yeah, this all makes sense that this will be we're getting stories leading up to and through the Battle of Jakku. What does that mean to you right now as a Star Wars fan? I know maybe you don't know all the names and faces as much as others, and I have forgotten many of them. But this goes back 10 years to Force Awakens. This goes to the graveyard of giants, the graveyard of heroes on Jakku, that we see the crashed ships and a Battle of Jakku. And yes, we learned a lot about what that was from a lot of different sources. Aftermath, the video game series, we have different views on Battle of Jakku. But now, 10 years out, Jen, this is almost a classic story we got here.
It's weird. It is weird how time works. I like it because as I talked about, this is why I love Star Wars, is being able to dive in and you see something presented on screen and you're like, I'd like to learn more about that. And in a lot of other properties, you don't. It's just always a mystery that just lingers on, right? But this with Star Wars, it's like, no, we're going to give you all the comics to be able to explore this even more, or the books or whatever it is. So yeah, I'm interested in learning more, and also learning more about these characters that you all have talked about so much and everyone has such an affinity for.
Yeah, I mean, Ray Sloan, I hope Ray Sloan is in there. It would make sense. A lot of things lining up there. The Star Wars stories that we've been talking about, Jen, I've already covered this era a little bit over the course of years. Again, video games, Battlefront 2 storyline, these books, other things as well. The Poe Dameron comic, there's the character Terex that emerges from this. He was at the Battle of Jakku. But they're not always and have not always been centered on Han, Luke, and Leia. Chuck Wendig saying at one point, I wrote a lot of Luke stuff in Aftermath. They took it out. We do get Han, we do get Leia. Battlefront 2, you see a lot of you get bearded Han, you get Leia leading the Battle of Naboo there. We get that, but they haven't been prominently featured. They haven't been at the lead, and in live action, Mandalorian timeline, Ahsoka, you mentioned Leia. I get why we haven't crossed that threshold of the whole recasting. We got Luke again, but that's part of the controversy. Like that is either loved or hated depending on your point of view. Luke and the Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. So I get why it's hard to do in live action. It's a great question to answer for the Dave Filoni movie when that finally comes out. But we have the ability to do it in books. We have the ability to do it in games, and we have now the ability to do it in comics. I was really excited to get the description today that Leia makes a startling discovery. That it is Leia and the New Republic, and we know Mothma and all those will be there as well. How do you feel knowing that they will be featured a little bit more prominently in the comic series, even if you have the time for the comic series or not, Jen? Just that the big three, and I'm sure Lando and others will show up, but the big three will have a key part in this part of the story.
I love it. It feels like a loosening of the reins because they are such beloved characters and people have had ideas on, and we obviously have had stories on what are they up to? What are they doing? And obviously I don't really feel comfortable having them in live action as much. I thought that the Luke thing worked. But here, it can just be fun. And it's, as we've talked about, characters to play with in the sandbox, right? Like they're there. They're on the table. Why not have a new story with Leia at the forefront? I love this. I'm so excited. I want to get this for my daughter. I think, I don't know. Are younger people still into like Star Wars comics? Yeah, right?
I don't know
Like
who's
teenagers?
into comics and toys if they're under the age of 40. I don't know, Jen. 'Cause I'm there. No, I don't know the actual numbers of sales. And look, I'll say this: we never have really covered the comics in depth here. We did the Rise of Kylo Ren review. It's one of our favorites around here. Joseph and I did try to cover them, but in the ForceCenter Discord, they're still read regularly by a lot of folks. And I don't feel great that I've kind of missed out on the last year of Star Wars comics. I still watch Alex Damon's Star Wars Explained canon updates to get kind of updated information. Kira coming back, one of my favorite characters, and it showed up in comic book form. I was kind of I got to admit, kind of let down because I want Emilia Clarke back as Kira in live action. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, we'll take comics. But I don't have that feeling here. I'm with you. I think this is a chance to loosen. I like that you said loosen the reins a little bit on bringing some of these classic characters in an era that they'd be at the book, the Princess and the Scoundrel, the Leia and Han post Return of the Jedi is something we absolutely love around here at Force Center. But maybe this will loosen it up to lead to an animated series that probably would already be in development or down the production timeline. But maybe we could get to that kind of thing where we could spend time with the big three and not worry yet about the recasting kind of issue, which I think I'm on board more than ever. I'm with you. I like Luke and Mando and Book of Boba Fett. I don't know if that would work for a movie. A recasting would, though. And I'm a fan of Alden Ehrenreich as Han, so I think you have your Han.
There you go. And I'm a fan of, what was it, Vivian Lyra Blair as young Leia. Amazing. Fantastic. I still want a young Princess Leia of Alderaan. I still want that. So
absolutely do. I think in a couple years you get the perfect time to put that together there. So that's one look at that's the big comic reveal, Jen, and we get, like we talked about earlier, the Battle of Jakku was once new to canon, but now nearly 10 years on, it's now a classic, and I that confuses me too. Time has no meaning, but there's more coming. There is a new visual dictionary encyclopedia research book coming out that has a foreword by Rosario Dawson from DK.
Cool.
There is the prequel graphic novel. So you say daughter likes graphic novels. We got the prequels in graphic novel form. That's good. That should be fun.
Yes, absolutely. What is the story about? Do you know anything about the story?
I think it's just the prequels told in graphic novel form. I think it's just going through them.
Great.
Which is always fun. But then the final one, Jen, and it just you haven't been able to with your school schedule. You haven't been on our news episodes, and you were gracious enough to move things around, and even though you were sick, show up here while Joseph's in Norway. And I think the Force called you here because this would be a travesty if we didn't get your reaction to this. There is a new Ewok comic series on the way. It's a 4-issue run featuring the Ewoks following the return of the Jedi. Steve Orlando and artists Alvaro Lopez and Laura Braga will be behind the series that will follow, quote, a team of Imperial-led bounty hunters and scavengers arriving on the forest moon of Endor searching for a secret cache of Imperial weaponry. Are they prepared to face off against the battle-ready Ewoks who took down so many more of their ranks? Who is the mysterious new warrior Ewok returning to Bright Tree Village? And what is their connection to Wicket W. Warwick? Jen, take it away. Thoughts on this and thoughts on the Ewoks 40 years later.
I am spiraling. Who is the warrior? The Ewok warrior. Of course, I want it to be Nisa, but then it's like, well, why? Why is she not in Bright Tree Village? Where did she go? Could it be okay? And here's where I need your canon knowledge. Peekpa. Is Peekpa around? Is
Or
Peekpa earlier?
Yeah. Oh, from from was it Jose Daniel Older's series, right? Or
Yeah.
the
Was
book,
it
The Last Shot. Yeah,
the
okay.
last shot? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Could it be Peekpa? Like, who is it? It's definitely not Latara. I'm just gonna put that
Okay.
out there.
Okay. Okay.
Latara, I would not call a warrior. So that's my first thing. But what I love about this is that Steve Orlando, he said that his goal, he wants to celebrate the Ewoks and
Mm,
explore their world. And that
mm,
just speaks to my heart because it's like it's fun to, to joke about it, right? That the
yeah.
silliness of the Ewoks, but I love that he's taking his mission seriously while
Mm,
still having fun in the moment. Because I love the Ewoks, but like he even mentioned, when
mm,
growing up seeing them, he really identified with them, right? Like as
right.
kids, seeing these characters being these powerful warriors, being underestimated and still, getting the job done. It's like that is thrilling to watch. I was just watched it with my daughters in the movie theater, and my 4-year-old was
Mm,
cheering. She was also
mm.
very upset when she saw the Ewok go down. She was like,
Rest
"They're
in peace,
fine.
Nanta. Yeah.
They're fine. They'll get back up." So yeah, I'm so thrilled with this. So
Uh,
thrilled.
I love that Nanta's breaking hearts generations after generations. It's a tragedy. Man, I love hearing you say all this stuff, and I agree with you and everything Steve Orlando is saying. I've come to, I 7 or 8 when seeing Return of the Jedi. I love the Ewoks, and I went through that. Well, I'm 13. I can't like them anymore. Type of, you know, train of thought and perspective. I've by working with you all these years. And just being open more to Star Wars storytelling in a way I hadn't been in the past from all angles. I love the Ewoks. I love the story of the Ewoks. I've called for years, Jen. You know, I've called for the Rise of Chirpa
Mm,
story. How does he take power? Turned it into a Game of Thrones Sprite Tree Village series that Chirpa saves the village from maybe a bad Ewok leader. I don't know. And then Princess Nisa being there, and knowing that she's Chirpa's daughter, right? And how, because I always said, well, Wicket probably naturally takes over Bright Tree Village. I was like, no, that's not his. It's Nisa's line. That's Nisa's destiny. There's so many things to do. Also, you got to deal with Logray. Like after it,
Oh
like
yeah.
everyone's got to turn them and be like, hey, you almost had us eat these rebels. Like, what are you doing? Like, we got to talk. Maybe he loses power. He's kind of the hand of the king. There's so many ways to go with it, and it seems over the top, but it really doesn't. And what this pitch captures the energy of that Ewok hunt mode that I've always enjoyed on
Oh.
Battlefront 2, which is you get to play as Ewoks hunting stormtroopers trying to flee Endor right after the Battle of Endor. And if you're, you become the stormtroopers as well too, and it's a horror film. It's frightening. Those little
Terrifying.
cuddly teddy bears become the monsters that you've always heard whispered they are, and I love it. And I wrote about it in my book Web of Star Wars. So to see it kind of explored, I'm really excited about this. And Jen, this leads to our final big question of the day. If this inspires a new love of Ewoks, maybe a new appreciation, or just brings forth people like you who are Ewoks fans, to the front and center of the Star Wars world, would you take a new version, a new take on the Ewok movies, comic form or another medium, a Disney Plus? Do we get a Caravan of Courage? Do we get a Battle for Endor in a more updated canon inline version in a way?
I feel like we've been manifesting this since ForceCenter began, and now we're seeing them return to the comics, getting their own little series. And so I'm like, okay, we're inching closer to what I
Yep.
ultimately want, which is a made for streaming movie, the
Mm-hmm.
Ewoks. I want justice for the Ewoks, like Joseph
Yep.
always says, justice for the Jedi. I want justice for the Ewoks. I want this done right. I love what
Mm,
you said about the Battlefront 2. Just you see how terrifying it is from another perspective if you are being hunted by Ewoks. I love that. I want to explore their culture, their traditions. I want this to be like, a nature documentary. I want it to be so many things, which means it's got to have a big budget.
mm. Oh yeah.
Right,
Okay.
because otherwise it could go really wrong, and it could look like, no disrespect, Caravan of Courage, right? I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
It's got to be done right, and
Mm-hmm.
then I think people will finally be on board with me and not laugh at me when I say that I love the Ewoks.
I think you have more people on your side than you've ever had before, than maybe since the weeks after May of 1983.
Yes.
This is the series that Tony Gilroy needs to take on.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? I just feel like because already we know that he's not like a huge Star Wars fan, right? I just would love to see how he would approach this and like approaching the costumes and things like that. Oh, that would be great. BTS.
I'm saying, yeah. Like all you have to do is just pitch, Tony. We've got the political story of political stories in Star Wars. Imagine a leader rising to power of a group of fighters, of fierce fighters with a tight community that's threatened from outside sources and threatened from within from a dangerous leader. He's like, I'm in. And like, cool. It's Chief Trooper. It's Wicket. It's Ewoks. Go for it. Throw in Teak in there so Nathan Hamill can be happy. I even wore my Nathan Hamill Drorg shirt today because I knew we might talk about Teak. Let's do it. Let's do it. And you can recast someone in the Wilford Brimley role. Just bring him in.
Gosh. Oh, make it happen. I just love this. I love this. Look, I never thought we would see Darth Plagueis. Okay. I never thought we would see Darth Plagueis on screen, and we got him. So I believe that we'll see the Ewoks again in their own series. Not series. That's aiming too high. TV movie.
Disney Plus streaming movie. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. Or, you know what? Screw it. Make it a TV movie. Put it back on ABC.
On Lifetime. That'd be another take on the Ewoks. The love story.
Put it on Tubi or Freeform. I don't care. Something there. Well, there you go. What are your thoughts out there watching and listening? Tweet us, post, X us, whatever you want to say, or leave a comment down below. But who would be your dream cast for or dream creator behind an Ewoks thrilling political series? We want to know. Or let us know who you think should portray or voice Darth Plagueis Wise. Leave a comment or reach out on social media. So there you go. Jen, any final thoughts on what we learned here today as we end this news show?
No, I still wanted that pink Nisa statue that Mop Graves did for Sideshow Collectibles. I didn't get it. I think about it every single day, and this story just reminded me of that.
There you go. Well, we'll have to manifest it well. Anyone out there works at Sideshow, let us know if we get a hold of the Nisa for Jen. We are out of here today. Been a lot of fun discussing this stuff. Thanks, Jen, for being here, holding down the fort while Joseph's exploring the world in Norway. You can find us. We're ForceCenter. We're on social media at ForceCenter Pod, on Facebook at ForceCenter Podcast, Instagram and YouTube as well. Podcast is available in a lot of different spots. Just search. You'll find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. We used to have a nice Ewok shirt on there designed by was it Alex over at Star Wars Minute? I think maybe that got taken down. I think Uncle Bob struck that down. But we used to have it on there. You can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. We're always excited if new patrons come in and join our Discord conversations, talk about the comics there. You can follow me at Ken Napzok or go to my website, kennapzok.com for more. If you're at Comic-Con this weekend and you didn't get into the Deadpool and Wolverine screening, come to a comedy show. American Comedy Company, 8 p.m. Mark Ellis and friends. I'll be on that show as well. Great lineup. Nick Scarpino, Joe Starr, Kyle Lewis, Malcolm Barrett, Mark Ellis, myself, and a whole lot more. You never know who will show up. And also, August 16th, I will be on Joseph's birthday celebration, the comedy horror variety show, A Horror Years Old. It's available as a live stream as well. So go to Joseph's website for more information. Jen, where can they find and follow you? And maybe let you know where you can get a Princess Nisa sideshow.
You can find me on all the social media sites at Jennifer Landa, YouTube, TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138.
There it is. All right. We have broke the news here on Star. See you soon on ForceCenter.